I'm not sure if I'm the first to use this phrasing or perhaps even originate it, but it's a phrasing that I will be utilizing in the future going forward quite a lot, and I've already used it in past coverage for other projects. And maybe others have spoken to the same phenomenon again without the terminology, so we'd be able to find a similar way of analyzing certain film projects or TV projects, to be fair, stuff available in the visual entertainment landscape. And that's brand mooching. This happens to be a case of what I've spoken of in the realm of horror and thriller cinema before. Let's say among more dominant trends over the last couple of years: clowns, nuns, zombies, sharks, dinosaurs, films like that. And vampires is the latest one we can add in, even though it's been a trend that's been rebounding, recycling itself for some time. I think it's in a revitalization stage, or at least the attempt of that. But in the midst of a more well-known film project, I think of the release date of this in close proximity to the upcoming Renfield, for example, the Universal Studios horror comedy project of Nicolas Cage, which I just looked at the final trailer, in fact, today. Again, it's out in a couple weeks, so this is coming out, I believe it's already debuted, in fact, shortly before, but it's still relatively in the window of that. But as I was saying, major Hollywood release, and all of these smaller studio efforts tend to piggyback on that movie. And I can't help but, look at this film from that perception in the last NOSFERATU. And as I understand, like I said, this film has already debuted publicly, I believe, on the channel to which is the distributor of this project. I'm pretty sure on that front, anyway. But again, that's why I've spoken of a brand mooching. Larger project, smaller pictures all come out in accordance over that shortly before, or maybe extensively after. And there's plenty of examples that I could cite, too many to mention, many of which I've already spotlighted in this channel in years past even. It's been an ongoing thing. And the vampire trend, as I said, is starting to make a resurgence, I would say, or at least the attempt of that. There's been some recent pictures that have sort of given it that vibe. Maybe it's available in smaller film fare, it's more seen there, again, in smaller projects, or within the larger releases, and that's mostly what I'm judging by. With Renfield coming out, you have as well the last NOSFERATU, which is certainly not the first picture showcasing NOSFERATU or anything related to that in the last couple of years. There's been several, and some classic films even. But let's take a look at this. I'm curious to see the full quality. I will say the poster is interesting in terms of a vampire construction. It looks more animalistic, to be honest with you, than other types of vampire depictions. I will, save judgment, of course, for watching the trailer and, give a full opinion on it after. But I wonder which direction this will take in regards to quality, because this is, like many of our films have spotlighted in the smaller film realm, ITN Distribution's got the title credit here as a distributor. And I don't know if it's a production credit as well. I know they're distributing the movie, or it came out from them, I believe, on their YouTube channel in full. So if you want to watch it there, you can. I'm curious with their releases. Again, I like to be open in terms of smaller films as well, in my judgment. I don't want to be too harsh. But judging from my library of consultations with ITN Productions, there's a wide mixture to the quality of their movies. Some projects fare, I think, very well, and that's usually among their international projects, though there's been maybe some small exceptions. Others perhaps have appeared a bit comedic, not necessarily by intention, but because, and again, this is fair to say among many indie releases, there's a smaller access to resources in comparison to larger studios. But the ITN type movies, at least on, again, a domestic landscape, tend to seem to stretch their budget constraints. And sometimes you can tell that the film, they can't go all the way as they would like to. And it shows in the quality. Let's say, for example, Rocket Hunter, or there was some dragon movie I looked at a little while ago, but that was the case, where you looked at the special effects. I'm like, you're still kind of in wanting, but I'll forgive you. I haven't seen that one yet. I did see Rocket Hunter, and that one, honestly, was kind of, admittedly, I found it a bit boring. Last NOSFERATU. Let's see what direction this goes. I mean, I don't necessarily, again, know what to expect, but I'll keep an open mind. I just can't help but attribute, again, this phenomenon of brand mooching, as I call it, or these piggyback pictures. Renfield's coming out, and so why not put out a vampire movie? Free advertising. Makes sense. Even if maybe by comparison to other projects, this is not as open or overt in titling. There's some that like really go all in. Let's say, for example, in recent release consideration, Cocaine Bear, Cocaine Shark, that came out a little while ago. Even that's got, its derivatives. I think Meth Gator's a thing. I still have to look at that one apparently, but people go all in again in terms of getting brand appeal for smaller projects. I get it, free marketing, but still it's a growing phenomenon. It's a trend in itself, and among the vampire trend, we're starting to see a replication of something I've seen in other film atmospheres. All right, last NOSFERATU. Let me judge this. Again, ITN, I don't know what to expect, but I'll be fair. Definitely smaller budget.
Waiting for your date again, I guess.
Is this a vampire character?
New star?
I just know her name.
Or regular human?
Black Pearl.
Black Pearl. Mystery woman.
There was no plot to go off of, by the way. It was presented like on IMDb or something, so I'm going in completely fresh for this.
Now is internet dating. Told you it's not going to end well.
So, what do you want to eat?
Meat.
Okay, well that takes on a different meaning.
There's something strange with this woman. I met her twice, and the last, she bit me.
This woman is dangerous. She's looking for something.
I must find her. This Black Pearl.
I would say this is a very interesting audio choice for the trailer. At first I didn't know if it would work, but now I'm kind of fascinated by it because it does play well into the tone, I think, of what it's driving at.
Completely out of your mind. You're a freak. Can't you see that?
It's all about female vampires in NOSFERATU.
I don't know what's going on. I'm losing control. For better life.
Who could have foreseen that happening? I mean, the logo is pretty cool too, with the teeth pattern coming off of the T's. I kind of like that. That's actually, like I said, a bit of a mixture with ITN, and I will say, admittedly, again, judging by my past familiarity, their domestic fare does not always tend to be the most attractive, because, again, of perhaps the lack of, at least for me, assertion in this is a must-see release. Some of the projects maybe I haven't seen yet, and others I'm like, I can probably wait. And again, most of the projects I've seen that maybe air more so on the side of a special effects budget tend to really show their constraints. This doesn't, I don't think. It's a smaller project, obviously. I mean, if you're familiar with the indie landscape, you can see maybe some of the way the films are shot. I like the lighting, by the way. It does appear aged, a bit browner. It's a good choice, I think, for a vampire film as well. It gives it a darker presence. I like how that plays as well in terms of the blood imagery, too. It really darkens the splotches. It's different, whereas maybe in other projects, the red would be a bit warmer in terms of its color, so it'd be more overt. This, again, gives a bit more of a... I don't necessarily want to use the word gothic, because that evokes a particular style. In fact, speaking of past ITN films... Come to think of it, this isn't the first vampire project, again, I'm familiar with them. And I say, again, the international attribution with, there is a difference in what I've seen in quality based on both geographical markets that has presented itself. Let's say by comparison, Caleb. That was definitely, I would say, a more, at least for me, highbrow, maybe lesser known project, even though I did have some issues with it when I engaged with the trailer. I was like, I could have done without the nudity. It was pretty graphic, at least. I'm like, I tend to prefer cleaner watches personally, but the gothic tone of the imagery, the color palette, the styling of the shots, and the atmosphere to it, I thought was very interesting. A bit of a deviation from, again, my expectations concerning ITN, and that was the first engagement with a vampire film. Now, in making the comparison, let me be clear, I'm not trying to necessarily overlap both films, because there is a separation in their realization. But I find the last NOSFERATU, by comparison with Caleb, and in consideration of ITN familiarity for me, a bit attractive, in all honesty. Again, like I said, the color palette, the performances as well appear pretty good. I like the romantic basis, and so there's a bit of a subversion as well in the poster, because my impression was this was the vampire who's going to emerge from that, but the origin point being the woman that he's seeing as being a normal guy, at least as the film begins. It didn't necessarily, again, going in, it was fresh, because I didn't have a consideration of the plot, other than perhaps, well, we're talking about vampire movies here, and the smaller film line, perhaps it's more of a mainstream presentation. This is pretty good, to be honest with you. I find it, like I've said in the past, there's been a couple movies with ITN that have appeared a bit invigorating, which is slightly indifferent from other projects that they've done. I'll definitely try and watch The Last NOSFERATU at some point. And again, like I said, it's got a pretty easy accessibility being on the ITN Movies channel. I'm pretty sure. Let me confirm that really fast while I'm thinking about it, because I thought I saw it pop up there today. I know the trailer was uploaded from them. But if I'm looking at the main window, yes, they have the film available to watch there, and it's shorter than even 90 minutes. It's 78. So it's an easy watch to sit down, and possibly enjoy. I mean, we'll see, of course, on the final film's presentation, but what I'm seeing here in realization is actually not that bad. Maybe, again, a smaller, film fare, you keep that in mind as you watch it, but I do try and be fair, again, from what I see. And in judgment of what I'm looking at here, based on the trailer, I find The Last NOSFERATU, to varying degrees, to be a compelling watch, even amid perhaps its, how do I say this? If I'm comparing it to other major releases, it's subdued in the extent of where it can go and its envisionment. But the filmmakers behind this, filmmaker Alan Delaby. That's the director's name anyway. We could say it's alluring or tempting. There's a lot of other adjectives I could use to describe this movie, because I just sense that presence of it, that it does appear to be an engaging release, and I want to humor it. Let me know your thoughts down below if you're considering this movie. Or, I mean, many of you are just looking at this on a first glance, I'm sure, because it is a smaller project. I don't necessarily have much traction it's gotten in public perception yet, and I do like to be able to, if I can, help embolden the presence of smaller features, if that is anything to be deserved. And I do find there's elements here with The Last NOSFERATU that conclusion seems warranted. Let me know your thoughts down below if you wish to disclose your perspective on what you think of this particular project, and if you'll be watching and checking it out. Like I've said, my usual feedback on ITN from a domestic release perspective is to look at the films and say maybe there's evidence of it being constrained in its liberty. I don't sense that with The Last NOSFERATU. I mean, I do, but it's not as directly shown where it comes off as a bit of a deterrence trait. I see a good workaround here with a film that seems to have established its identity pretty nicely, even amid, again, a growing landscape of vampire releases and it becoming a more dominant trend in the cinema world right now, given, again, adjacent releases like Renfield. It's not a surprise to me. Although this we've worked on for, a long time, and maybe it's just coming out in that window, but it does feel like it's sort of, again, being a piggyback picture to a degree because of the focus here. I find it to be a compelling watch, at least a temptation. Much in the same way that I did an Atmosphere, that I even though, again, I had my grievances with it, Caleb expressed the same strength, to different extents. But The Last NOSFERATU actually appears to be a pretty engaging film, one that I would humor, as somebody who is familiar with vampire stories and romance movies as well. I liked that angle. Again, with the subversion being it's the date that comes in, who bites him and everything like that. So it's not necessarily who we think starting out in that origin role of presentation that, oh, he's the vampire going in, in other circumstances, that he becomes that instead. I see a good film here, possibly. Final, presentation and viewing of it will tell in terms of, my feedback on it, but so far in what I'm looking at, I sense a good engagement opportunity. Very possibly. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.